Niilo Sevänen, Winter's Gate. Asbjörn. Ingolf Keen-Eyes and Little Ulf had captured a man by the riverside. He was an oddly stunted old gaffer with a brownish-grey beard and unusually bright eyes. The man had already been hit in the face a few times, so father presumed that he was ready for questioning. The old man wiped his bloody nose on the back of his hand and peered at us from under his brow. I told him in Irish that he would do well to help us and answer my questions truthfully, or Little Ulf would slice his throat. He nodded and replied in a thick Gaelic dialect that he was willing to do anything so that we would let him go. The man said his name was Eifjord. I asked him about the villages on this coast, but he swore that there are only deer and fox in these lands. He apparently lived alone, deeper in the woods, and from time to time he would go to the river to fish. The old stump also told me that there were no monasteries in these parts, but the nearest one could be found far on the west coast. I told him that we were coming from the west because we had taken the southern roads around Ireland and that we had already been to 2 convents on the western coast. After hearing this, he looked more startled than ever. Deceitful worms, the whole lot of those Irishmen, father snorted when I told him what Eifjord had said. Tell him that we will go and have a look at that abode of his. If we find anything besides what he told us, we're going to rip out his lying tongue. The gaffer was not pleased to hear this, as one can imagine. He swore to us again that there was nothing worth pillaging on this coast, and that his tiny hut was so far inland, it would not be worth our while to travel there. But a few days to the northwest, he continued, speaking more softly, there would be an island full of treasures and gold, an island of which few people knew, and which had not been discovered by a northerner yet. The island was home to a peaceful people who had no forts or weapons, but who had piles of gold in place of all that. Father stared at Eifjord and ran his fingers through his beard while he pondered. An island full of gold, you say? By the 8 hooves of Sleipnir, is this man deranged and a lunatic, or is he the first stroke of luck we have had on this journey? You're not buying into those foolish tales, are you? Egil the Bald said to father. Of course he will lie to save himself and his family. His village is probably a little farther inland. Let's go take a look. Seems too far-fetched for a lie he just now conjured up to save himself. I weighed in. Why didn't he come up with something better? For instance, that we would come across a monastery if we continued along the coast towards Scotland? Fair point, Asbjörn, father said, and kept measuring the Irishman with his eyes. He sure doesn't look like there would be treasures in his hut. Is it worth it to hike through the woods because of an old scruff like that? Are you thinking that we should go out to the open sea to look for an uncharted island, even with the winter on the way, then? Egil the Bald contested father. I might well be, father replied. Asbjörn, tell the man that we'll take him with us, and he'll take us to that island of gold. If we don't find anything, he'll be learning how to swim in the sea without his arms. After hearing these greetings, Eifjord looked at us solemnly for a moment and nodded. Good, father said, with a wide grin on his face. Gather the men. We're not going to find anything on this wretched coast. Sigurd. Fog. Nothing but fog for 2 whole days. The men were growing restless. The woman who worshipped the cross, who had been grabbed from a convent by thick Eric, cried and complained incessantly, and no one could bear listening to it. We told Eric to make her quiet, but that amounted to nothing. Eventually, Pirkka the bear, that crazy quen, took the woman and tossed her into the sea. That, of course, led to a rumble, and Eric ended up losing a front tooth. Some were already saying that the Irishman is leading us to our deaths on purpose, that we will soon arrive at the world's end, the maw of Jormungandr will swallow us. Others were complaining that we are wasting precious time on useless wanderings, even though the winter will soon be upon us. I know all that. Today is the first day of Slaughter month, the first day of winter. But I will not return home empty-handed. Raiding a few forlorn villages and monasteries had only awarded us with dented silver cups. Sure, we had Irish corned beef, blood sausage, cheese, beer, and mead, but we had not found any riches. I could not go back to Nidaros carrying sausages. What would my brother say, that cheeky bastard? He would howl with laughter and fiddle with his gold chains in satisfaction. And that is the man the king made Earl of Björkby. I shook the unpleasant thought and noticed that Asbjörn was talking to that little old Irishman. My son tried to explain something and waved towards the fog with his good hand. Asbjörn one hand. That is what the men called him. When he left for Jorvik as a young man, he was called Asbjörn Surehand. It was almost 7 years that he spent in these misty islands, and then some Scotsman struck his sword arm off below the elbow. He returned home a silent man. Every time I see his severed arm, I want to wail like a child. I let out a sigh and turned my gaze back to the fog. It almost looked like the weather was going to clear up. I could see the ship of Egil the Bald trailing us not too far back. "Land! There's land ahead!" yelled one of the men. And sure enough, the fog was fading away in front of us, and there was a glimpse of something far ahead, just like a mountain's peak. Sheena. I woke up. Something was wrong. I rubbed my eyes. Mom and Dad and Anlon and Oisin were sleeping in the darkness. Faint sounds of breathing and snoring were all I heard. Then I remembered Niasa. I had left Niasa in our summer home. How could I have been so careless? She must have been in the chest. I had been naughty, and Mom had taken Niasa from me. I had yelled at her, but she said that I would get her back if I was good for the rest of the day. My friend would wait in the chest until then. I had been good. I had, the whole day. But everything happened so fast. Mom and Dad cleaned everything up and packed our things. Then we left for our winter home. And Niasa was left alone in the chest. Even I didn't remember that. I had to get Niasa. I would sneak out quietly and not wake anyone up. I would quickly go to our summer home and be back before anyone noticed anything. I would also get to see the sea once more before the winter arrives. Asbjörn. The island was lush, and the mountain stood at its center. Egil the Bald sailed his ship around the island, and we took to land from the south. As I was wading through shallow waters at the shore, I looked at the size of the mountain and wondered why no one knew about this place. The mountain had to be visible from quite a distance at sea, when the weather was clear, that is. The shore was quiet. Not even a bird's song could be heard. Dark spruces rose in silence towards the grey sky. The men scattered to look around. Soon, there was a scream of excitement. Styrbjörn the Swede had found housings. A score of little huts stood shrouded in the woods. They looked deserted. Father cursed, because he had probably thought the islanders would, at the least, live in houses made of gold. He ordered us to search the whole village carefully. Up close, one could tell that the walls of these huts had been woven out of willow in a strange manner. Their roofs were made of 3 branches and peat. The huts would easily provide cover against wind or rain, but they were not warm enough to sleep in during the winter. The inhabitants of the village were nowhere to be seen. These islanders were certainly not giants, as their doorways only reached up to my neck. I opened one of the doors and peeked into the lightless room. Everything inside looked very modest, only a bed, a table, and a couple of chairs. Suddenly, there was a scream, a child's scream. I shut the door and went to see what was happening. Little Ulf was holding a small child who was screaming and wriggling angrily. "Look what I found," Ulf chuckled. "This was hiding in one of the huts." The girl was small, tiny even. She must have been 6 or 7 years old, but it was hard to tell because she was so very short. She was not all skin and bones, at least, so she could not have been starving recently. She had dark, messy hair, and she was wearing leather clothes. The girl had an odd string around her neck, with smooth stone rings on it. "Asbjørn, take the child and question her," father ordered, and looked at the girl's clothes in disappointment. "And the rest of you," he raised his voice, "keep searching. If we don't find any gold, that old scruff will certainly be wishing that he hadn't tricked us." Then he left, muttering to himself. I took the child into my arms and finally managed to calm her down. She spoke a language that did indeed resemble Irish, but a language I struggled to understand. I told Eifur to come and help me, but he, too, deplored the girl's unusually strange dialect. I had a feeling that maybe the old man understood more than he let on, but there was nothing I could do about that. Questioning the child was troublesome. She kept saying "Niasa" and not much else. She just stared at me with her big dark eyes. At times I thought she was talking about a mother, at times a winter, but that was as far as we got. We did at least find out that her name was Sheena. It was an Irish name. According to Eifur, the child said she wanted to sleep. Maybe I should take the girl into one of the huts to rest and keep asking questions later. At that instant, a joyful scream came from the distance. "Gold! Come take a look. Gold by Odin's beard." Sigurd. Soon I would be the richest man in Norway. Richer than my brother, richer than the king. In one of the huts, which was larger than the others, there was a golden statue almost as tall as a man. The statue was of a wolf, a beast with 6 legs and an ugly grimace on its face. Surrounding the statue there were golden beams. They appeared to be seeds of some kind, although they were awful small. We examined the statue and the beams and knocked on them, and it seemed that they were really made of pure gold. A fortune beyond measure in a small village like this. This seemed unfathomable. Had the gods finally decided to reward me for all my hard work? The only problem was that the statue and the beams would not budge. That bastard cup of Fenris was so big that it could not be moved. The golden beams were also firmly attached to the earthen floor, and even Pirkka the bear and little Ulf together could not lift them. We would have to break the treasures into smaller pieces in order to move them with a ship, and that would take ages. We did not have endless amount of time. Egil the Bald returned after sailing around the island, and he told us that there had been dwellings on the northern shores as well. We decided to make camp in this village with the golden wolf, and tomorrow we would search the whole island. There was bound to be more gold. There had to be, hopefully in a shape that would be easier to move. In the evening, we noticed that the scruffy gaffer had vanished. Hakon Strawbeard was supposed to watch the man, but he, too, had forgotten everything else while admiring the golden wolf. I did not even have the heart to scold Hakon. That old man was of no use to us at this point anyway. We sat by the fire, laughed and drank, and thanked the gods for this day. Sheena. The tall man put me in Maka's house. The bed was hard and I could not sleep. Through the cracks in the wall, I could see one of the men moving outside. The others were making noise farther away. I felt like crying, but I tried to be brave. I had not had enough time to find Niasa. I should have been with Mom and Dad, sleeping, but the men would not let me. What do they want? Do they not know the winter is coming? Do they not know that you cannot linger about the summer homes anymore? We have to hide, soon, underground, in warm safety. Tomorrow, I will tell the one with the sad eyes that I must leave. Tomorrow, I will try to tell them, but these tall men are a bit stupid. They cannot even talk like Oisin, and Oisin is only 2 years old. But I will try. I have to. Otherwise the winter will swallow us all. Asbjørn. The gate was almost as tall as 2 men. It was found halfway up the northern side of the mountain. There was a flat landing mined into the rock, and on the back wall stood giant doors of stone. The gate was embedded with golden inscriptions, apparently an unknown form of writing. In my head, I cursed again the fact that they had let Eyfjord escape. The man tried to crank the doors open, but that was a waste of time. They were built with so much care that there was nothing to grab onto. Not even the hinges could be seen. Fritjof Blackbeard tried to cut out the golden inscriptions with his knife, but he only snapped the blade. Curse it all, that is surely where the biggest treasures await us, Father ranted and kept grinding his teeth. And I am certain that all the islanders are hiding inside that rock. Bring the little girl. Let us see what she has to say about this. I went to get Sheena from the village, where thick Eric had been guarding her. He moaned that the child had not as much as touched the food she had been given. Maybe she just was not hungry. I picked up the girl. She was so light to carry. While walking, I thought about Ilva and our little child again. Poor little girl. If she had lived longer than a day, I might be carrying her like this, like a baby bird. But they were both gone. I felt something in my throat that I could not swallow. Sheena watched me with her dark eyes, and then she wrapped her little arms around my neck. She said something that I did not understand. It was as if she were consoling me. I tried not to look into her eyes, so that I would not burst into tears. I kept walking with my head down. A cold wind was blowing against us. It smelled like spruce and pine needles and the sea and winter. Then we got to the mountain. Sheena became restless. She kept twisting and turning in my arms and glancing around. She went on about the winter, her mother, and the hideout again. When we saw the gate and the man, she started crying. She was clearly afraid and wanted to get away. Father was in a foul mood because the doors had not budged. He told me to interrogate the girl and ask about the gate. That, of course, did not work. Sheena just kept sniffling in tears, and she did not even want to look at the doors. The girl is afraid of this place, I finally told the others. This is useless. Damned brat, Father murmured. She should fear us, not her own island. Maybe this is a forbidden place, Egil the Bald said, and looked at the giant stone doors. Maybe these people come here to worship their gods. Maybe they built this place for their gods, and they don't come here at all, I said. Look at the size of those doors. They don't look like they were designed for the same people as those tiny huts on the shore. Well, who uses these doors then? Father asked in a mocking tone. No one answered. The wind just kept howling against the rock, and Sheena kept sniffling. I thought I understood what she was trying to say. Away, away, quickly, away. Father glared at the grim-looking gate and spoke with a sigh. Let's go back to the village. I don't like this place either. Sigurd. Tonight, no one felt like singing. We all sat by the hefty campfire and kept glancing into the black of the night. I could feel the man gradually growing more restless. More gold had been found. Some of the men had searched the village on the north shore, and they had found another gold statue. Thorgeir the Shetlander told us that the statue was of an ugly man of some kind, with big ears and sharp teeth. Must be a god or some monster to these locals. The men had not liked how the statue looked. I could not care less what trolls these islanders worshipped. I was more irked that there was no gold here to take with us. A treasure worthy of legend within our reach, but yet not within our grasp. I was coming to the conclusion that the gods were toying with me. "We have to decide what we're going to do," Egil the Bald exclaimed. "Winter's coming. We have no time to spare." The men were muttering and nodding. Most of them were looking at me. "I say we sail back to Ireland tomorrow," Styrbjörn the Swede offered, and tightened his cloak around him. "We should find a village for the winter. If a snowstorm catches us at sea, Thrym will take us all." "Should we abandon all these riches?" I cried out loud. "There's enough gold here to make us all royals." "But we can't stay in these huts in the winter, and we cannot carry the gold with us," Egil the Bald said with a somber face. "Let us come back in the spring with horses and proper tools. Then we can take all these treasures." "And if someone beats us to it?" I asked, with arms out wide. "Or the islanders hide their treasures when they notice that we've left? I'm telling you, there will be nothing left in the spring." My bellowing echoed among the silent trees with such unpleasant loudness that I was even startled. Everything went quiet. The men kept staring at the flames in silence, with grave looks on their faces. Were they all against me? Were these fools going to throw away all these treasures? "I would worry about where the islanders have gone," Asbjörn said after a moment had passed. "I don't think they are hiding behind the gate." "We have searched the whole island," I huffed. "There's nowhere left to hide. We have to break down the gate." "But the little girl was afraid of the whole mountain," Asbjörn continued. "I don't think her family is hiding in there. There's something we are missing here." "Damn right there is," I grunted. "You will question the girl thoroughly tomorrow. We will find out where everyone's gone. I would bet my head that those mongrels took all the valuables with them when they saw our ships. They left only the statues." "And if the girl reveals nothing?" Egil the Bald pondered in turn. "How much longer are we going to keep stalling here?" "I will make sure she tells us everything," I said, and gazed into Egil's eyes. "And then I will rip the head off that golden wolf, if nothing else. I am not leaving empty-handed." Sheena. Niasa. I had gotten Niasa back. The man with the sad eyes helped me. I kept trying to tell him that Niasa was lost. Finally, he let me go into our summer home. I could not open the chest by myself, but the sad-eyed man helped me. And there Niasa was, all alone. Now I pressed Niasa against my chest while I lay again in Maka's house. I was no longer so sad. I was no longer all alone. The man with the sad eyes had brought me sausages and jam. I tried telling him yesterday that I don't need any more food. There the bowl lay untouched by the bed. There is not much time left. I have to try to tell the tall man. Maybe the sad-eyed one will listen. He's a little smarter than the rest. I will tell them that the children of summer must hide quickly. The snow, the wind, the breeze are coming. The cold creatures of winter will soon crawl out of hiding. Asbjörn. The air felt heavy. I could have sworn that there was a thunderstorm coming. The day was not yet past noon, a clear, grey day. My father was arguing with the men over what we should do next. I sat close by on a rock with Sheena and tried to get her to talk about her family. She held her wooden doll in her lap and tried to explain something with her eyes wide. Only I still could not understand what she was trying to say. Some words here and there. And then came the bark of thunder. No, it was not thunder. The sound was deep and resonant, and it kept going and going. It felt like the whole island was echoing and trembling. The men were yelling and cursing, and they looked at the mountain, startled. That was where the roaring sound originated. And then the sound stopped, as if someone had cut it with a blade. I held my breath and stared at the sky as black clouds appeared with the speed of a storm wind. The whole canvas went dark in a heartbeat. All of a sudden, the wind blew at us in gusts that threw some of the men on their backs. Then it started hailing snow. The whole world was covered in a grayish-white flurry that swallowed everything. Fimbul winter. May the gods help us. Then I realized that Shina was no longer with me. I called out for her, but with the wind howling, I could not even hear my own voice. Of course, she had fled. She would try to get to her family. She must have gone deeper into the woods. I tried to cover my eyes with my good arm, and I ran into the flurry of snow. Sigurd. It was cold, terrifyingly cold. The wind blew snow in through the cracks in the walls, and slowly there was a pile of snow on the floor. The breeze had my teeth clacking. Why had these damned islanders not built proper dwellings for themselves? May Fenris tear them all to pieces. We had gathered in the largest of the houses, by the Golden Wolf. The storm showed no signs of calming, and we had no business being outside. It was already almost dark, and we could not get the fire going. The men were hungry and freezing, and scared. I sure hope our ships can handle this, Egil the Bald cursed, and ran his fingers through his beard, and that the sea isn't frozen by morning. If we can't sail out of here, we'll make these houses winterproof, I said gravely, and peered out of the cracks in the wall. It looked like something was moving in the hail of snow. Asbjörn had vanished, and the girl. On top of all that, the men who had left for the mountain this morning had disappeared too. Maybe one of them would soon find his way back. Is there someone outside? I asked, and tried to see into the flurry. It seemed as if a crouched figure were circling the house. Someone is moving out there, little Ulf noted, standing next to me. Just come in here, I yelled and unsheathed my sword. We'll be waiting right here. The man kept staring at the door. Everyone had a weapon in their hands. The only sound coming from outside was the shrill and monotonous howl of the wind. I could feel my sword hand shake. At that instant, the door opened and my heart almost stopped. A dark figure stood by the door, a small bearded man with snow in his hair, the old Irishman. Sons of Odin, the lords of the sea, here you stand whimpering, he said with a grinding tone. I jumped when I realized that the gaffer was speaking fluent Norse. Long I have watched you rape and pillage the coasts of my people. Too long. Do stay here and enjoy your treasures. The man let out a heartless laugh and turned to leave. Grab him, I managed to yell. Little Ulf leaped at the man, but suddenly he was not there. Ulf threw his arms at what was now thin air and fell face first into the snow. The old man had disappeared. Only his laughter echoed in the darkness, and even that was soon blown away by the wind. Asbjörn. Little footprints crisscrossed in the snow. I stumbled forward, knee-deep in snow. The wind was whipping my face in frozen slashes. Shina could not have been far. A little girl in this kind of weather. By some miracle, I had ended up back in her tracks, but now I did not even know which way the village was and which way the mountain. Every now and then I called out her name, but it was useless. Only the roar of the wind answered me. A time or two I thought I heard voices in the flurry of snow, but I must have imagined it. Then I thought I saw something. I took a few hasty strides and caught up to a small figure that was trying to make its way forward in the storm. I picked the girl softly into my arms. Sheena was yelling to my face. She was furious. The girl pulled herself from my arms. She was waving towards something in the storm, and she kept repeating a word that might have meant a door or a gate. Then I heard something, a shrill sound that blended with the raging winds. It was like a howl. Sheena heard it as well. Terror stared at me through her eyes. Hurry, I could understand. Hurry, hide, hurry, hide. Then the girl signaled me to keep moving forward. I started pushing myself through the snow with Sheena in my arms. The ground seemed to be leading me upward. Somewhere to our right, I heard more noises. This time a coarse scream. A scream from a throat that was not human. I could feel the child trembling in my arms. Suddenly, we arrived at the base of the mountain. Sheena was fighting me so hard that I put her down. The girl crouched to the snow-covered stone wall as if she were looking for something. She shoveled snow with her tiny hands and mumbled to herself. I looked around and saw someone moving in the whirl of snow. I could distinguish a hazy figure that was closing in on us. It seemed large. I was going to pull out my sword, but then Sheena pulled my sleeve. She was pointing at something at the base of the mountain and pulling my hand. I saw that a crevice or hole had been uncovered from under the snow, just big enough for a small girl to squeeze through. Hurry, said Sheena, and crawled into the crack, with the wooden doll in her hands. Her tiny feet disappeared into the blackness. I looked behind me. The dark figure was not far. It was an animal of some kind, maybe a large bear or a giant wolf. Step by step it was getting closer. I could see that another creature was behind it. I glanced at my stub of a sword hand and sniffed. I glanced at the unknown beasts, glanced at the small hole in the rock. Gods, help me now. I unbuckled my belt and let my sword and its sheath fall into the snow. I dived belly first to the ground and felt around in the darkness. The crevice seemed to expand right after the narrow entry. I tried to get my head inside. The hole was so close to the ground that I had to turn my face to the side. The rock was tearing at my ears and cheeks while I forced my way deeper. I imagined how it would dig into my legs at any moment and pushed forward with all of my strength. Blood was running from my temples into my eyes. I screamed in pain. Then my head was through. I tried to pull my shoulders in, and at the same time I was kicking furiously at the snowy floor. My coat tore at the shoulders. Something growled only a few steps behind me. I managed to get my shoulders through the hole. I pulled, pushed, kicked, and grated myself all the way in. Immediately after, something slammed at the entrance and killed all the light coming from the outside. I crawled desperately to get farther away. Then I could hear stone grinding against stone. I heard a faint thump, and then the darkness was complete. I realized that the entry had somehow become shut. Through the rock, I could hear how a large beast was roaring and ferociously tearing at the ground. At some point, I had turned onto my back. I lay quietly and tried to calm my breathing. I wiped blood from my eyes. I felt one of my ears, which seemed to have been half torn off. My knees and shoulders hurt like hell. Then Sheena's face appeared above me. I noticed that it was not completely dark anymore. The stone rings on the girl's neck were shining a faint light. "Let's go," she said. Sigurd. No one has returned. Asbjörn, my poor son, where have you gone? Have you hurt yourself and passed out in the snow? Or has that Irish snake murdered you with his cunning and wrongdoings? I can carry home as much as gold as the ships can bear, but what will Thora say if I return without our son? Home, even the thought seems so distant. We have positioned ourselves in a tight circle and managed to get a fire going, but the fire is small and weak, and there are so many of us. Large, frost-stricken men shivering with their glazed beards. I am stomping the ground and trying to bring feeling back into my toes. Coldness like this, a storm like this, out of nowhere. What powers of Jotunheim have we got upon us? I am imagining the roaring fire in our fireplace and the warm arms of Thora. Servants are bringing me heated wine. They have sweetened it with honey. What a drink fit for gods. At the same time, I notice Asbjørn playing on a bear hide. He is still just a child. His hands are still intact. He looks at me and laughs. Listen, Pirkka the bear says suddenly. His foggy breath rises up towards the ceiling. Outside, noises. I'm trying to listen. The endless moan of the wind has numbed my ears. The same hollow song is still echoing around us. Something's going on out there, Egil the bard says, through trembling teeth. Sounds like someone is screaming. Go look through the cracks, I say. But no one moves. It feels like the cold would petrify anyone who left the circle. There is only a small, weak flame in the middle, and surrounding it, only endless darkness, a forever night, and eternal coldness. Then I hear it, a howl that makes my blood freeze. At the same time, our fire dies in a single breath. There is almost perfect darkness. I can hear one of the men sobbing quietly. Outside, the sounds of the storm are mixing with a horrendous choir, like the wail of a dozen wolves. Soon, it is joined by other harsh voices, cold laughter. Nobody is moving. Nobody is even breathing. Maybe they will go away if we stay completely silent. Suddenly, I hear a snap above me, and something falls on me. I tumble and try to cover my head. I realize that the roof has collapsed. One of the men lets out a hideous scream. I try to crawl away from under the fallen pieces of ceiling. Something topples onto me, and I roll to the side to escape its weight. Then I see something bent over the man lying next to me. The beast is ripping Egil the bald's throat open with its teeth. I pull out my sword. The giant creature immediately stands up, to its 6 legs. Holy shit of Fenris. The abomination of a wolf attacks, knocks me on my back. I scream and shove the creature as hard as I can. It is emanating coldness on me. Then I realize that my sword has impaled its palate. I struggle to crawl away from under the senseless beast and yank my weapon out of it. Then I look around. Ragnarök. Ragnarök is upon us. The house has fallen apart around us. Men are screaming and trying to escape, but the beasts are already on our backs. I see Pirkka the bear fall in the snow, and immediately there are 2 wolf beasts on top of him. Closer to me, one of the creatures is tearing apart a man, who might be Ingolf Keeneyes. Farther away in the storm, 2 of us are defending themselves with swords against tall, merciless figures. Giant clubs swing fiercely and crush the men underneath. Cold sets of eyes gleam briefly in the dark. All around me, men are falling, and more monstrosities spring from the snowstorm. All the beasts, trolls, and the frost giants of Jotunheim must be here. The ships! I must get to the ships! I run headfirst in the flurry of snow. Maybe I can make it to safety, escape, sail away. Maybe no one will notice. Maybe the beast won't. A hit to my shoulder. I'm rolling in snow. My sword is gone. I can't feel my other arm. I scream as someone lifts me up into the air by my shin, holding on with an icy grip. I'm twitching helplessly, upside down, and flinging my arms around. The frost of death is spreading into my leg. An abhorrent face is cringing at me. I can feel its icy breath. Then the giant raises its club. Sheena. It was good in the dark. It was safe in the dark. I was walking along a passageway and holding Niasa in my hands. Niasa sang a quiet song about the spring to me. The sad-eyed one was crawling behind us. He was too tall for our horse. We had come all the way down to the housings. The man kept looking into the rooms opening up next to us, where my relatives were sleeping. I told him that we must go a little farther. We were not far. Then we arrived at our winter home. Mom and Dad and Annon and Oisin were sleeping next to each other. Their breaths could barely be heard. No one had noticed that I was gone. The man with the sad eyes stared at my family without saying a word. I took a piece of cloth and wiped away the dried blood on his face. Then I offered him water. The man drank eagerly. I told him that we should sleep now. Sleep until the spring. Sleep until the creatures of the winter would crawl back into the depths and the gate would close. Sleep until the sun would warm the rocks and we could run straight into the sea and swim. Then we could go back to our summer home. The man looked at me, then at my family. Then he nodded. For the first time, I saw him smile.